Romania has a problem, and President Nicușor Daniel Dan is furious. The problem? Nicolae Ceaușescu is viewed positively by 62% of the population. How dare Romania describe a communist dictator positively, is what the Romanian president might be thinking. Capitalist politics are in turmoil about it, despite the fact that communism was overthrown by force more than 36 years ago. 62% of the population now speaks positively about that terrible Socialist Republic of Romania. Nicolae Ceaușescu was the second leader of Stalinism in Romania during the First Cold War. He came to power in 1965 following the death of George Georgiou Day, who had been appointed General Secretary of the Romanian Workers' Party by Stalin in 1944. The party seized power in 1947 after the Kingdom of Romania was dissolved. The Stalinists founded the Romanian People's Republic with George Georgiou Day as its leader. The regime of the Romanian Workers' Party was Stalinist, but with a strong emphasis on Romanian nationalism. This did not please Moscow, who felt that all communist parties should act as lackeys of the Soviet Union. Furthermore, trade with the Western capitalist world was substantial. Nearly 35% of all Romanian export went to the West. When George Georgiou Day died in 1965, Nicolae Ceaușescu took over from him. Ceaușescu decided that the People's Democratic period was over and that Romania had realized socialism. The name of the party and state was changed. The country became the Socialist Republic of Romania, and the party was given the name Romanian Communist Party, RCP. However, there was no question of genuine socialism. There was no workers' democracy, no democratic participation of workers in the production and planning of the economy. Everything was determined by the members of the party, not by actual representatives of the working class. In the 1970s, Ceaușescu developed a keen interest in the personality cult of Kim Il-sung in North Korea. A personality cult had actually become less popular after the death of Joseph Stalin, certainly after 1956. Many Stalinist leaders chose to glorify Marx and Lenin, but not themselves anymore. Nicolae Ceaușescu saw things differently. Like Kim Il-sung, he believed that he and his wife should be the center of Romanian socialism. Marx and Lenin faded into the background. Nicolae and Elena became the center of a personality cult that would last until December 1989. When the Soviet Union carried out an invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968, the Socialist Republic of Romania was opposed to it. Nicolae Ceaușescu believed that each country should determine for itself how they wanted to realize socialism. The West liked this. A Stalinist leader who positioned himself independently of Moscow. while the anti-communist countries were fiercely opposed to the so-called socialist countries loyal to Moscow, Ceaușescu received little criticism in the Western media. The opportunistic capitalist world wanted to keep Romania on good terms this way. Ceaușescu had grand plans, but not the money. So he began borrowing money on a massive scale, and capitalist banks were willing to give him huge loans. As a result, the facade built by National Stalinism appeared to be reality. From 1974 onwards, large construction projects were set up to modernize cities. Large apartment blocks replaced the dilapidated pre-war homes. For workers, these were positive changes. For the new flats offered luxuries they had barely known before 1974. Rents were low and education was free, as was healthcare. With nationalist bombast, the Stalinist bureaucracy declared that Romanian socialism was successful. Despite the new constructions, the Socialist Republic of Romania was burdened with an enormous debt load. Nicolae Ceaușescu was not pleased with this either. So the great leader of the country, the conducator, decided that severe austerity measures had to be implemented to pay off the debts. Workers would simply have to bleed for the socialist new construction. While the government turned off the money tap everywhere, Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu continued to live in luxury. The 1980s were very hard for Romanian workers. Heating was not allowed to exceed 15 degrees in the winter, and electricity was also available in limited quantities. This also explains why the anger was so great from the mid-1980s onward. Financially, the country was healthy in 1989. Unlike Stalinist countries or even capitalist countries, Romania had no debts left by the end of the 1980s. But it was the working class who had to suffer for this. Meanwhile, the conducator built his own palace in the middle of Bucharest, a building more than 300,000 square meters, which he called the so-called Palace of the Republic. Entire residential areas had to be demolished to build the Stalinist monstrosity. Due to the extreme logic of austerity, it is logical that many Romanians felt completely disconnected from the so-called Romanian socialist nation. The Ceaușescu family had lost their sense of reality, while poverty was widespread due to the austerity measures they imposed on the working class. Workers yearned for political freedoms, but Ceaușescu refused to relinquish his absolute power. Romania remained a classic Stalinist country, even though the end for the Stalinists was in sight, in Eastern Europe. In December 1989, the bomb dropped. After years of austerity and poverty, the working class rose up. This was partly organized by dissidents within the Romanian Communist Party. On December 21st, the elderly Nicolae Ceaușescu delivered a speech in which he praised Romanian socialism. Workers could no longer tolerate this and began shouting anti-Ceaușescu slogans. The conducator turned pale with fear. The masses turned against him. Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu were airlifted to safety by helicopter, while the masses turned against the symbols of the state and party. The all-powerful Romanian Communist Party disappeared overnight, as its leaders wanted to appear anti-Ceaușescu and in favor of the uprising. A trio of ex-RCP leaders appeared to take control after Ceaușescu fled. Dumitru Masilun, Ilan Ilescu, and Petre Roman once supported National Stalinism. They presented themselves as so-called revolutionary leaders. In reality, they were ex-RCP, who very quickly disregarded all Marxist symbolism in order to appear primarily nationalist and patriotic. In fact, their National Salvation Front was dominated by ex-RCP members. Ion Ilescu's Social Democratic Party would eventually grow out of this National Salvation Front. That was the Party of Social Democracy in Romania, later the Social Democratic Party since 2001. Nicolae Ceaușescu would not live to see any of that. The trio wanted to get rid of him and gave military approval to shoot Nicolae and Elena. The Romanian People's Army, which had been loyal just a few days earlier, decided within 24 hours to shoot their conducator and his wife on December 25, 1989. The military court was a sham. Elena cursed the soldiers while Nicolae was still singing parts of the Internationale when the soldiers opened fire. The execution of Nicolae and Elena was intended to give legitimacy to the National Salvation Front. It was actually a swift reckoning to make way for the trio. The Socialist Republic of Romania was formally dissolved on December 28, 1989. Elections were held in 1990, but they were not truly democratic. This was because the National Salvation Front controlled the media, the state, and all information. Romanians were primarily shown the political line of the trio, and thus they voted for those ex-Stalinists who, until December 21st, 1989, had still faithfully followed the conducator. Ion Ilescu and his Party of Social Democracy in Romania had won them again. However, the new Social Democrats only used leftism as a facade. Neoliberalism was their true ideology, meaning deregulation and austerity. State-owned enterprises were sold for next to nothing, often to figures associated with the Party of Social Democracy. Many workers opposed the privatization, but there was no tradition of workers' struggle. There was no question of organized resistance, partly due to the fact that what was considered left-wing often considered of hardline Stalinists, and no one wanted to see them in power anymore. The leaders of the Party of Social Democracy in Romania gratefully exploited this by claiming that deregulation and market forces were necessary. The result? Even more poverty. Child poverty, in particular, remains high. The government did not consider the suffering that befell millions. Romania had to become attractive to foreign investors, and so they primarily wanted to avoid establishing any regulation to protect workers and their families. The market was God, competition was king. In 1996, the Party of Social Democracy in Romania was punished for their neoliberal politics. Nonetheless, they managed to return to power in the year 2000. Thus, the ex-Stalinists continued to exercise power in capitalist Romania. In 2007, the country became a member of the EU, and the internal market was opened for European capitalists, with the full support of the ex-Stalinists. The country has become a presidential state, meaning that the president holds significant power. As a result, elections increasingly become a charade between different sections of the capitalist class. Due to poverty, corruption, and inequality over the last 36 years, support for Nicolae Ceaușescu increased every year, mainly because capitalism failed the generations born after the uprising of December 89. The country's current president is Nicușor Dan. He is displeased with the fact that Nicolae Ceaușescu is perceived positively. What the capitalist president forgets, however, is that workers feel their lives were better under Stalinism than under capitalism. The generations born after 1989 know only capitalist inequality, poverty, and politicians who only think of themselves. They know the stories of their parents and grandparents. They do not talk about cruel communism, but about a period of job security, free healthcare, free education, and a sense of community that does not exist in present-day Romania. These are positive characteristics of the Socialist Republic of Romania that capitalist history books, the media, and politicians do not want to talk about. Liberal politicians like President Dan cannot understand this. To them, liberal democracy and capitalism are the ultimate good. They blame misinformation and nostalgia for the positive image of Ceaușescu. Revolutionary socialists do not glorify Stalinism. However, we do point out that the Socialist Republic of Romania offered a glimpse of what is possible if the economy is not owned by a capitalist minority, as is currently the case in Romania. The market economy has destroyed much and caused widespread poverty. The alternative is therefore socialism, democratic control by workers. However, this requires a socialist workers' party, a party that breaks with the established politics and the capitalist state. That is what Romania needs.